This is the Hidden Killers Podcast with Tony Brueski.
Featuring defense attorney, Hidden Killers daily contributor, and host of the Defense Diaries podcast, Bob Motta.
If we're looking ahead on this and there is a new Alex Murdaugh murder trial, what will it look like compared to the first one? What sort of differences do you think that we will see?
I hope that the financials are streamlined. I hope that if it's Creighton Waters that's trying it again, that he realizes that he does not have to put on 4 weeks of that testimony. I think that they can streamline that. I think that they can really whittle that witness list down and just really hit home with the high points. That's the advantage to the state in terms of, all right, we did this. We probably didn't need this witness, this witness, this witness. Let's get rid of them. And as far as everything else, I think it stays about the same. They're going to call the same witnesses. The real where it gets really interesting is the defense side of it. And it's whether or not Murdaugh's going to testify again. I think everybody pretty much agreed that the moment that case turned to definitely guilty is the minute that he opened his mouth on the stand. And and we got to look at it too. In another way, the second round is he's going to be going into it already having testified of where he was, and so the lying elements of that part of the lie is not going to be part of it. But I suppose they could present that in the previous case you didn't say this, and then at the end you did. But it doesn't have the same impact that it would as it did the first round. The other question would be the financial misdeeds, and does that enter into a retrial, considering it almost didn't make it into the first one? I think Jim said something that kind of opened up the door to discussing that, and then all of that went into the trial. But granted that those things are ongoing and we don't know exactly where those cases are going to be at the time of a retrial should one happen. Will the roadside, Jim's never making that mistake again.
Yeah.
Like the whole roadside shooting thing came in because Jim opened the door with that one question.
Yeah.
So we can assume that's not going to come in because Jim's definitely not going to make that mistake again.
Sure.
As far as the financials, it depends. I don't think Newman can sit on the trial. I think it's going to have to be a fresh judge. And maybe that judge has a different opinion on that 404B stuff with the financials. I don't know. You know what I mean? Those were all Newman's rulings, and they're not necessarily because it's not remanded from the appellate court where they've decided that issue. You know what I'm saying? So they're going to basically have to, the question will become, does the new judge have to abide by the old rulings, or does the new judge get to hear fresh argument on it and make his own ruling? Because what happens if that judge doesn't agree?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? The interplay of that is going to be fascinating, whether or not that's all going to get in again. It's going to be a thing. I think substantially it'll be the same trial because the evidence is the same. It's all going to be a matter of what gets in and what's kept out. You know what I'm saying? How it changes the look of it and the feel of it. If you're Creighton Waters, you're like, well, I got a conviction. I want to keep it pretty much as, a pat. It worked for us, because if you remember at the beginning of that case, we were like, oh, I hate his motive. His motive doesn't make any sense. It's a stupid motive. But at the end of the day, it worked. You know what I'm saying? So because it was a tough motive for people to kind of really wrap their mind around. Oh, especially the way that the defense was trying to play it off. What you're saying? This guy knew that his financial house of cards was collapsing for months. They're acting like this day was something in particular that would have caused him to go off the rails and decide that he needs to kill his wife and his son. It doesn't add up, and I was on that ship for a long time. I'm like, man, I don't know about this motive. It's a super weak motive, but you don't need motive. Motive is completely unnecessary. People just want motive to understand why. And especially in a case where you're talking about somebody killing their wife and their son. Yeah. It's you want, as a human being, you want to understand why. What would ever bring you to that place where you're causing that to happen? It's, we just as humans, we want to know why, even though it's not required under the law to get a conviction on any of the crimes that he was convicted of. So, I don't know, man. It's going to be a good one, though. For sure.
The sequel. Sometimes they're better. Sometimes they're not. We'll have to see.
Yeah, for sure. Part 2.
Exactly.
You're consuming the Hidden Killers podcast.
Want more? Start binging on all of our true crime podcasts right now through Apple Podcasts and get an ad-free experience when you sign up to be a True Crime Today Premium Plus member exclusively on Apple Podcasts.
More of the Hidden Killers podcast Dropping soon.
Press subscribe now.